seconds. 29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds. 9.
8.
7.
6.
It's what?
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Hi folks, and welcome back to the Scotch Tracker. Today we'll be discussing Star Trek Voyager. Thank you very much to Barbara for joining the discussion. What are some of your favourite episodes of Voyager, Barbara?
Well, good morning, Dan, and everybody else. Favorite episodes of Voyager, that's always a list. And I don't think I ever say the same ones twice because I keep ticking them over, but recently Night was on the top of that list. Some others I really like. Let's see. Now, of course, I've drawn a blank. We might have to circle back as things float up. You'll hear some of my favorite episodes, but I like. I know that this is one of those provocative statements, and I'm fine with making it. I really like Tuvix, and I'm going to tell you why. And some of you probably already heard me say this, but I watched Tuvix last year, I think, about this time, actually. And it was late at night, and this probably was a poor choice on my part, but so it was. Anyway, I woke up in the middle of the night, unaware that I was me and not Janeway, because I'd gone to sleep thinking about what would I do. Well, that just continued until it woke me up, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I couldn't. Nothing else in my mind was going to go forward, nor would I come back into normal consciousness until I made a decision. So I finally made a decision, and then I realized that I wasn't, in fact, waking up in the middle of the night as Janeway, which is what I thought was happening in my brain. My consciousness was completely twisted and weird from sleep. But I had to make a decision. And the fact that a piece of fiction impacted me to that degree gave me a clue that it was of tremendous value and well written. Because normally, when you think about it for a little while and you let it go, but if it doesn't let you go, that's something else. So that's on my list. Some of the ones I really enjoy, maybe an unpopular choice, but I think Shattered is a lot of fun. What else? I like the 37s as well. Also probably not a popular choice. Those may not be my favorites, as I can't bring them all to mind just like that, but those are some.
Cool. I was remembering recently watching my memory's a bit failing at the minute as well.
We can help each other then.
What's the episode with the Voth in it?
Oh, I was just thinking that Distant Origin, because I was just thinking Distant Origin. That one is on the top of the list. It comes up for me as really quite good. And now I can add a couple more. Year of Hell is a particular favorite. I like Scorpion. I think most people do.
I was thinking Voyager did really good and really well received, like two-parters, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of fun ones from there.
Year of Hell, I liked Twisted, and I really like quite a few of the ones that were in the first season, but obviously I know it's not the most popular season, but I like Eye of the Needle, even like Caretaker, I thought was really cool. So yeah, quite a few. Do you have a favorite character from the show?
I wanna back up and ask you about Twisted. I'm one of the few people I know. Now you're the second person I know that would actually bring up Twisted as an episode they really liked. Folks that I've spoken to were kind of looking at me sideways as to why I like that. So I want to know, why did you like Twisted?
I think it's just one of those episodes. It's like, I think it makes a difference what setting you originally saw it in. And for me, it always reminds me of watching it in a small room at a Star Trek convention in my home city of Aberdeen in Scotland. I thought yeah, it was really cool experience, and I loved going to those conventions. And like studying Voyager for Memory Alpha basically over years, I thought it was quite interesting that that was like one of four that were produced for the first season and held back for the second season. So I thought like the production history of it was quite interesting in that regard, and a couple of the other ones that were like that as well. I don't remember all four off the top of my head, but I do remember Non Sequitur was like that, and I quite liked that episode as well for like the sort of timey-wimey aspect to quote Doctor Who.
Yeah. So for me, Twisted, it was an early example. I won't say one of the first, but I'll say an early example of the entire crew working together to solve things, and actually the crew saying to each other what they mean to one another. So for me, having Chakotay and Tuvok deal with their issues, having Janeway say to Harry that she's proud of him, those kinds of things were really touching to me. I also, maybe it was the fact, I don't know what you say about the first time you saw it, but anyway, the first time I saw it, I was genuinely creeped, and it was effective. Like, I was creeped out by this. And I thought what was very reasonable and something you almost never see in Star Trek is failure. And that the what do you do when you fail? And that very ending scene where you see everybody handling their failure and essentially preparing to meet the end, whatever that was going to be, was very telling, and I thought moving. And so I haven't really understood why others didn't like that, because I felt that I really got a chance to get to know the characters more in that little snippet than I had in many of the other early episodes.
Cool. I quite like the effects in it as well. They're, I think, sufficiently or effectively strange looking. Yeah, and just the fact that like you're saying, like, the sense of impending doom or whatever, and they did so much in the story while keeping it all contained just in the sets that they had. Mm-hmm. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, they did get a lot of mileage out of their sets, and a lot of story without going or depending on setting, which I think reminds me of TNG's The Drumhead, which is very similar in that regard. Mm-hmm. I thought of another one that I want to... Sorry, I keep stepping you down. I'm really sorry. I thought of another one that I really like that I don't think gets a lot of attention, and that's Good Shepherd. Way in the tail end of the series, where it deals with some of the lower deckers on Voyager and Janeway's leadership and another failure of hers as she perceives it. I think that episode has quite a lot to look at in terms of learning pitfalls and successes in terms of being a leader and dealing with people who are not necessarily performing in the same capacity as everybody else. They may not be meeting the standard for one reason or another, and how you handle that. And I thought it was creative how and frankly quite telling, the fact that Janeway goes several rounds with these folks before she's successful, and multiple of her attempts to draw them back into the fold, as it were just failures, and they blew up in her face. And it's just, yeah, that's exactly the experience. You try some stuff, and it's not always going to work with members of your team.
I was remembering recently watching with yourself and how it's been covered by the Delta Flyers podcast, which is a great podcast, which I would recommend to our viewers.
Absolutely.
When they recently talked about worst case scenario, which actually turned out to be like a funnier episode than I'd remembered it being. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
I always forget about worst case scenario, that it exists, and then I love it, and it's just this delightful little surprise. And it's not like I don't remember the episode, but I always forget that it's there. Kind of like a book that's been shoved behind all the others, but it's really pretty good.
Yeah, I've been thinking that, it's just right before, like, the Scorpion two-parter, which is often, so often cited as, like, the most popular, some of the most popular episodes of Voyager, the entire series.
Yeah,
It was kind of overshadowed.
that's probably
but
it.
do you have, like, a favorite character or characters from the show?
I do. I've said it before and I'll say it again that Janeway's my captain and that I made myself off of her because, I mean, I was a tween when Voyager first aired, and I was just becoming awake and aware enough of the world that I realized I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and seeing her at just that moment as a scientist and a starship captain, as a leader, quite frankly, although I wasn't really aware of that aspect at the time and now, but I basically took what she was up to as a person and applied it as broadly as I could, with mixed results, of course. But I just remember saying, "Oh, what would Janeway do, or what has Janeway done in a similar situation?" Like, literally, this is what I'm thinking as I'm in early high school, even dealing with whatever it was I was dealing with. And then a rewatch later as an adult just brought it home just how much Janeway really meant to me. And I have some other favorites. I think highly underappreciated Chakotay. And I think I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about him, perhaps because he's underappreciated. His leadership style is, I think, a bit more subtle than hers, and I don't think to be dismissed as, in any way, as lesser, more complimentary, I think. Chakotay spends the entire series attempting to parent everyone, including Janeway at times, and it's not all that common to see male characters that are emotionally intelligent and playing what's essentially a counselor role. If there was a counselor on Voyager, it was Chakotay. And I think they really could have spent quite a bit more time exploring that part of his personality. And I think it could have been quite effective had they chose to do that. But in general, I guess I feel that what counselors in society have to offer tends to get diminished, forgotten about, or generally underutilized, I think, broadly. I've now moved over into the real world. I apologize if that's out of bounds, but mental health is a huge issue for lots of people. And there's still, at least in the United States, this, "Oh, you're seeing a therapist? There's something wrong with you." Whereas there's an opportunity for Chakotay or other counselor-like characters, Troy, and obviously, to make it just really normal for people to seek counsel when things are squirrely up here, when they have decisions to make, when they're dealing with stress, when they're dealing with depression, as Janeway does in Night. All of those things. And I just, one of the things that I would really like to see Star Trek tackle is normalizing that even people who we would see in society as incredibly high functioning, just people who are our heroes, people who are our leaders, dealing with what actually goes on in their heads, which, it may be news to some, but Janeway actually showed us in Night that, guess what? Our leaders are not gods. They actually have a lot of the same anxieties and stresses and sometimes depression or and difficulties that we do every day. And sometimes they don't handle them very well, and sometimes they do. But we often don't get to see that. It's often hidden from view. They don't talk about it. I think, I'm definitely in soapbox category now. I think the world would be vastly improved with much greater access and utilization of counselors. And that's why Chakotay is important to me.
Cool. Regarding counselors, I was thinking, like, there's not only Troy, but also like Ashley Dax in DS9. But I think I was trying to remember. I was trying to think who else might play like a counselor sort of role, and I came up with Cass.
Yeah.
Can do from time to time. I think especially with the Doctor. From what I remember.
For the Doctor.
Yeah.
And Tuvok for Cass, frankly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wanted to speak to someone about Kim.
Did? Remind
Yeah.
me, because I've forgotten. It's totally out the
You
window
said
now.
you think because he's like underappreciated, maybe.
I'm sorry? I couldn't hear that.
You think that he's because he's underappreciated, perhaps.
The two people I mentioned, or the person I was talking about was Chakotay. I'm not sure what. I don't recall having
Right, okay.
a planned statement about Kim. However, since you bring him up, I will talk about one of my other favorite episodes, which I think is highly under talked about, and that is Nightingale. And the reason for that is similar to the reason for my liking Night. It has to do with leadership and some of the pitfalls. And in this case, for Ensign Kim, learning how to be a leader and really making a mess of it before he starts to get his act together and figures out what that's about. I love that episode because a lot of people, I suspect, think that leaders are just kind of pop out of thin air as either good or bad, when in fact it's a learning curve instead.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this was a rather brilliant illustration of, well, at Kim's expense, but also to his credit eventually, of what that can look like. And I definitely identified some of my own earlier quite ham-handed attempts at leadership as a kid or as an early adult in college, where I made some truly horrendous mistakes when I had a leadership role in a small group or like a school project or something like that. Just some of the stuff I did that I thought was going to work and was so ineffective or downright destructive. And you can see Ensign Kim making exactly those same mistakes. I thought it was highly illustrative of that process.
I was thinking about regarding Kim. I've got like quite positive memories of the shoot because it sort of like put him in conflict with Tom Paris. I thought that was quite a good sort of aspect to an episode. Regarding like that sort of thing, like what do you think are the best character relationships in Voyager? We've talked about a bit about it so far.
Yeah. I'd like to answer that. I'd also like to come back to it because I want to know what your favorite characters on Voyager are because I don't know.
Well, let's say Cass is one.
Cass? Oh, good. I want to hear about that. That's an uncommon answer.
I think I've got quite a few uncommon answers.
Well, that makes it interesting. That's what this is all about. So please.
I was like really disappointed when she was written out of the series. I think she was a strength of the first season at least. I thought it was an interesting. I'm basically a fan of whenever they like introduce like an alien race and do so by saying these aliens are different because such and such a thing, and for the Compa it was their age, I guess, or as well as like the powers that they eventually go on to develop, which makes them different from humans. Even then, I think there are some episodes she wasn't portrayed the best in, like Elogium. But then, that's one that comes to mind. But then again, on the other hand, like I really like Before and After that she's quite a central character in. And who else? During this discussion, I have been thinking about like all the black and white stuff that you get with like Chaotica and Tom Paris on the holodeck and everything that makes the show a bit different from any of the others. I can't really remember black and white sequence that's like played, with the main characters, and so much in any of the other Star Trek series. Yeah, I quite like Tuvok. I like the Doctor. I wasn't a big fan of Seven of Nine because, although I liked her and I liked the character concepts when she was introduced into the series, I thought from then on there seemed to be like too many episodes about her and involving her character essentially. I quite liked Belanda Torres, especially Faces. I really liked the episode Faces. And like, there's one, I think it's Lineage, where you see her as a young girl at a campsite talking with her father. I thought it was really quite interesting to think about her sort of human upbringing as well as her Klingon upbringing that you get in other episodes, like Barge of the Dead, and there's quite a few. She talks about her mom and Miral. I think Naomi Wildman was another one of my favourite characters, because you not only see her as a young girl for most of the series, but like in Endgame you see her growing up, so you see like the different parts of her life, and not only that, but also in I think it's Deadlock, where it turns out she's actually from a different Voyager. But I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I thought I was about to say I thought it was a bit like Amy Pond or something like that in Doctor Who, where the timeline is a bit complicated and it brings in other aspects of a character. You're like, oh, that's interesting. So there's quite a few. I really liked the character relationship with Paris and Harry Kim. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think are some of the best character relationships?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Naomi because her relationship with Seven of Nine is on the top of my list. Is one of my favorite relationships between characters on Voyager. I find the two of them getting to know one another absolutely charming. I like Naomi very much as well. And I think something that actually really hurt with her character was Neelix's departure. And Neelix comes into her room and says, "Would you like me to read you a story?" And she says, "I'm not a little girl anymore. I have to do my homework." And I went, no, that's, oh my goodness, that's not what you say to a parent. I mean, and of course I can relate to that because as a kid, you start growing up and you start saying, no, I need something else from you. And that's very reasonable. But for me, that was just super poignant scene because Neelix then says, oh, she doesn't need me anymore. And that's of course not true. It's patently not true. She just needs something different and is growing up. And so for me, that was just terribly sad for Neelix that he did not see his role evolving as opposed to just an unceremonious ending. I will also say to that end that I did not particularly like that Neelix didn't continue with the crew. I did not like that he left. I really would have liked to have seen him getting to know the Alpha Quadrant. Something that I think is just missing. I would have liked to have seen his reaction to realizing that the journey was over and what was he going to do next. Because as somebody who is so focused on being useful, which is why that scene with Naomi was so painful for him, I would have loved to have seen the conflict between, yay, I succeeded, I supported these people in getting home, and I mean, what a hero am I? Because I can hear Neelix thinking that. And then he realizes, wait a minute, what am I going to do now? I would have rather seen him confront that. I think it would have been quite a challenge for Neelix to arrive in the Alpha Quadrant.
So, regarding like the ending of the show, like what would you like to have happen? Would you like that they arrived at like the end of the 6th season and maybe the whole of the 7th season showed them on Earth, or in the Alpha Quadrant, or maybe like a shorter like arc at the end of the 7th season, or for the way that it was done with them arriving on Earth in the final episode, and maybe like a TV movie or something like that afterwards.
For my money, I wanted to see a series of films. I wanted Voyager to go to film just as TNG did. And so much so that I'm writing one of those. It's over on my whiteboard right now, because I don't think that opportunity is lost. And I think that there's still 20 years later, there's a lot that we could still do with Voyager. It's not just, collecting dust, as it were. I think there's a tremendous amount of work that could be done in that part of the Trek universe. I don't have an objection to the story of Endgame. Frankly, I cry every time. I don't know if I'll ever not, and I always think I'm not going to this time, and then I always do, and I'm like, oh, okay, not again. Here we go. So, I don't have an objection to that storyline, but I do have an objection to no falling action after it. I needed to see, how did Janeway get along becoming an admiral? How did that debrief go? Because, oh my goodness, I can see at least a couple of stuffy admirals being a real pain, right? Want to know what Tom and B'Elanna get up to, and I want to see Harry Kim get a free promotion. I know that's a tired refrain, but man, that ensign worked his tail off, and he deserved it, just deserved it. So, and I want to see Chakotay grow and blossom. I also want to see Seven grow and blossom, but frankly, not together. That was not something I found compelling. So I'd be very interested to see all kinds of changes. And Tuvok dealing with, being back in the Alpha Quadrant, go see his family. It would be neat to see Tuvok's family, right?
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I was thinking that if I have like any objection to Endgame, it's probably mostly that I thought it was a bit too similar to the ending of The Next Generation with All Good Things, where you've got like the main characters in the future helping the ones in the past, or at least the captain character. I think I kept having that feeling with Voyager that quite a few of the stories were like harkening back so much to The Next Generation. I think that was sort of one criticism I felt of the series. But I think it can be hard after a while to differentiate episodes and shows, after they've done so much. I think even in like the original series, they encountered that difficulty as it went on. So, yeah, I was also thinking about how there's it seems like quite a lot of criticism of like Neelix, or people that don't particularly like that character, which I was thinking originally, like I found Neelix really quite frustrating, but like grew to like him over time. I think there's an episode, particular episodes that I really like him in, that's called Fair Trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you on. Sorry, I'm with you on Neelix. My first run through as a tween and later teen and adult, I did not like Neelix. I found him irritating and just, drove me nuts. But when I rewatched as an adult, I thought he was amazing. And I saw in him the struggles of a lot of people who maybe don't fit in quite like they plan, and they don't necessarily figure out how to fit in. And they are providing something very necessary to all the characters around them, which is another perspective and contribution. And how do different kinds of people get to contribute in the world, and how do we actually make space for and value differences? So for me, Neelix is an absolute shining example of Janeway seeing something in him, as much as he's, well, frankly, he assaults Tuvok on a regular basis, which I don't condone, but it conveys some of the difficulties with his character. And Janeway sees, okay, that maybe there's some friction here because there's some social issues with Neelix and everyone else. And we really need him because his contributions are something that nobody else has. So it's a matter of figuring out how someone who is a little bit different, who thinks a little bit differently, who acts a little bit differently, can really contribute. Rise is one of my favorite episodes with Neelix. Let's talk about another unpopular episode that I happen to like. I just get so much joy out of Neelix telling Tuvok off once and for all, and then continuing to be his friend, having done so relentlessly. For me, I just feel this inner sense of glee when Neelix tells Tuvok what a jerk he's been, and gets to be a hero. I thought it was just awesome.
I think like people complain that he's too much of like a sort of character that's designed to look cute and stuff like that, which I know was one of the design approaches that Michael Wassmore, who designed the Talaxian makeup and Neelix's makeup, was like deliberately trying to make him like look sort of cute, and basing it on like the Lion King warthog, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm glad I know that now.
Like on the other hand, I was thinking like even from like the end of season 1, where you've got like the episode of Jachel, like they're clearly trying to make him like more than just like a cute character,
Exactly.
cute looking character, and flesh out his backstory and everything, make him more serious. Do you have a favorite season of Voyager?
That's an excellent question. I hadn't thought about that, frankly. And I think there are, going through a rewatch, I find myself looking forward to particular parts. And there seem to be some that I really look forward to seeing in every season. For example, as I'm essentially doing a rewatch with the Delta Flyers as they go along, because, I mean, why not? I find myself thinking, I can't wait to see what they say about this or that. And some of them include Scorpion, and some of them, I mean, I really was looking forward to, it's not called that, Sacred Ground. It's not called that is the nickname I have for that episode in my brain, which is just wrong. I don't know how I got one, but it has a nickname. Anyway, not relevant. I was really looking forward to hearing what they had to say about Sacred Ground, because it was one of my favorite episodes. And I was not disappointed, I have to say. I did not know and hadn't bothered to look up, because frequently I don't look these things up, that Robert Duncan McNeill had been rather instrumental in the creation of Sacred Ground. And I was just all the more impressed with him when I did find that out. So that, and I very much, I can't wait for them to discuss Year of Hell. I'm really looking forward to that. And I want to hear what they say about Night and the Melon. Season 5 has a lot of stuff that I really enjoy. There's an episode whose name has escaped me, but which I found very impactful. B'Elanna crashes on a planet alone, and a the primitive culture ties her up and makes a play out of her life. You recall that episode? What it's called?
I don't remember. I don't remember the name.
I watched it recently. I don't even know why. Oh yeah, because I used the random generator on our website, which says watch a random episode of Trek. So I did, but that one I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say about. Yeah, there are bits in all the seasons, but there are a lot of those bits in season 5. Of course, I can't recall them all right this second, but maybe slight leaning towards season 5.
That's interesting.
What about you?
I think. I was thinking that I get the episode that you're talking about. I was a little bit confused with Blink of the Eye, or Wink of an Eye. Yeah,
Which
Wink.
is an
Cheers.
exceptional episode.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think probably my favorite season. Like I liked season 5 quite a lot, but I think my favorite overall season is probably season 3. Yeah, it's got quite a few episodes like I really like in it. I was thinking. We've had a few questions coming in, and as I told you before we went live today, I was thinking about like what you think about like the fact that you know, the crew of Voyager doesn't just consist of Starfleet officers, but also has like McKee crew members, and like how do you think it relates to politics?
Mike, that's a really good question.
I couldn't think of 3 groups or 3 processes.
Well, I wasn't sure what was referred to with the 3 groups, but I'm thinking perhaps Kessa Neelix plus Maquis plus Starfleet might be what Mike's referring to, but I don't know for sure. But it's a good question about Voyager and today's politics, just taking a look at that. Oh yeah, I answered a Twitter poll recently, because I do that. Yeah, it's fun. And their question was, best first officer. Yeah, Chakotay, exactly. Mike Adams, quite correct. I answered Chakotay specifically because of this question, and that was that Voyager provides us an opportunity to see what it looks like when somebody has deeply held convictions, as Chakotay clearly does, so deeply that he leaves Starfleet and joins a rebellion. And Chakotay loves Starfleet. There was so much that... I mean, he lied and ditched his tribe to go join Starfleet. So there's no question that he has a deep love for what the Federation does and all of these things. But it went so off the rails for him that, of course, he ends up being Maquis. And so when he ends up in a circumstance in which the greater good is involved, he makes a decision to set down the emotional charge, because I think it's very difficult to rebel if you don't have an incredible emotional backing to your rebellion. So Chakotay is deeply invested in the Maquis, and it's over the course of a day, maybe 2, that Caretaker takes place, where he goes from I'm being hunted down by this person, who essentially I'm being hunted down by the government that's hurting me, is essentially his relationship to Janeway in the very beginning of Caretaker. And then over the course of those 2 days, to take a step back from all the emotion of Starfleet did this wrong and that wrong, and I can't believe they abandoned us, and my friends and family are dead, and this is a bad treaty, and this is a bloated bureaucracy, or whatever it is that Chakotay's got on his mind. Those are just the things I imagined he might have had. To my friends have sweated and died for this, and to, okay, this is a Starfleet ship, and this is the situation. The choice was he could be stubborn and fight the Federation, or just ditch them, essentially, without regard to what might occur for his crew. His ship was not particularly large. The survival, he clearly weighed the odds, but the point of all of this is that he did step back from his emotional reactions and emotional disconnect from the Federation and make a choice that was for greater good, both for the Starfleet crew and for the Maquis as well, knowing that it was going to be politically difficult. And that, I think, is incredibly relevant to what's going on today, especially in the United States, where people are bitter and angry, and everyone is wrong, and everyone is dumb, and basically you can't get online without seeing how hateful and evil the other one is. That's a rough place to try to build something from, and in fact, it's a great way to make things fall apart. So looking at Chakotay and his decision to say, okay, I may be perfectly correct in all of my complaints about the Federation, and this is more important. This is what needs to be done so that everybody survives. So I guess I would just ask everybody, and Mike, this is for you, because you asked the question. We on Spaceship Earth here are facing more than a few existential threats to our survival as a species. What is it we need to do as a species, and I do mean as a species, to survive? And are we doing it, or are we busy biting each other because we want power or we're desperate to be right? And that's where I think Chakotay is absolutely a shining example of figuring out what to do and then working out the details as you go, reaching for compromises and doing what's in the interest of the greater good.
Do you think like Voyager struggled enough on the way back to Earth? I was thinking about the Year of Hell two-parter and how that was at one point considered to be taking place over the course of a season rather than just a two-parter, and how, you know, there's all these shuttlecraft and stuff like that, and you know, it seems like they've got like unlimited resources and stuff. It's like, where did all these things come from? Yeah, do you think, like, and I know that I was thinking also about how Ron D. Moore, who worked on TNG and DS9, had sort of criticisms of Voyager and went on then to do like the reboot version of Battlestar Galactica, which was sort of in a way similar sort of story, where they're, you know, trying to like flee through space, lost basically, and do, like, it seems like they do struggle quite a bit more, I think.
I think that's brilliant, and I'm so glad you brought up Battlestar Galactica, because I was going to bring it up. As I was listening to you, I was thinking, okay, let's compare Voyager and Battlestar. By the way, full disclosure, I absolutely love Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. I thought it was brilliant. Some of the finest writing I've seen for television out there. It's on the top of my list. I have, 5 or 6 shows that I think are the best that television has ever offered, and it's on that list. There's a balance here. Do I think that there was a bit Deus Ex Machina for Voyager? Yes. Does it bother me? Meh. No. It's Trek. It's Battlestar Galactica is meant to be gritty, and frankly, I think it's representing how humans are more or less now getting stuffed into Voyager's situation-ish, if you'll bear with me on that. And the grittiness and just Battlestar is dark and real in ways that get you. That's part of what I love about it. But that's not really appropriate for Trek, because the mission of Trek, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, so please disagree with me, enjoy that process, and that's awesome, is to see how humanity has evolved into a mature species, and what that would look like in a situation like this. So Voyager really couldn't get as gritty and dark as Battlestar it was, and still be Star Trek, because Star Trek is not a dystopian future. That's the point of it, right? So I thought that Year of Hell was quite sufficient in in the struggle, in seeing some of the things that we don't necessarily see between episodes. I kind of headcanon that we see snippets along their journey, but there are some really bad days that we just didn't see. And Year of Hell being one of them. But there's a part two to your question.
Same thing.
Yeah, there's a part two to your question, which was about Year of Hell being designed initially as being an entire season, and what did I think about that? I've had quite a few thoughts over time about whether that would have worked or what I would have liked as a fan, and I'll say this. I have a limited amount of patience for "and it never happened because time travel," or "and it never happened because curse," or "and it never happened because dream." Losing all that character development, losing all the struggle, losing all of the heart of something as, well, gritty, to use the term again, as Year of Hell. I think that worked because it was a tiny snippet. If they had gone to the end of the season, which I would have loved to see that struggle, don't get me wrong, I think that could have been juicy. But if they had reset, I would have been angry as a fan. Just straight up, you cheated me, especially for Janeway and Chakotay, because the development between those two characters, I mean, Chakotay fessing up to Tom that he loves the captain, and her with the pocket watch. If you had gone an entire season with that and then hit the reset button, I would have been furious, absolutely furious to lose. And one of the great losses, which I tolerate because it was in a short snippet, was the friendship between Seven of Nine and Tuvok. And that relationship of guilt and caretaking and friendship that built there was absolutely a beautiful relationship. I don't think I could have dealt with it very well as a fan if they had spent a season on that and then taken it away from me. And Mike, if you don't mind my intruding on the chat, maybe you can pull this up. Mike says,
Yep.
Love to see Janeway and others after retirement. Where do you see each of the characters after their retirement? Funny you should ask. One of the things that I've been deliberating about as I write a Voyager film 20 years later is, well, have they retired? Have they not? And I will share a little bit of my process as a writer thinking about these characters. Couldn't see Janeway retiring like Picard did. Couldn't see it. So while I think she'd retire eventually, not in the time frame that where the story that I'm writing is set. As for how they would retire, I still don't know. I'm still in conversation with Janeway in my head about, okay, so when are you wanting to do anything else with your life aside from Starfleet?
Well,
I can see her just going out right to the other end.
Yeah, I was thinking just now, like, I can see her retiring myself, but I can see that from a place of necessity rather than will.
Yes. If there was an event that forced her to retire, I can see her doing that. But I have a really hard time seeing her giving up what she loves short of that. And part of actually what I've been kicking over in my head is, what would be that event? What would it take for Janeway to actually decide that she wants other things in her life aside from Starfleet? And I haven't even figured that out yet, but that's something that I've definitely been kicking over in my head, Mike. That's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's really good. Well, thank you to all our viewers, including Mike, and to everyone for watching today. And please remember to like and subscribe to the video. Join us on Thursday when it'll be the 19th of August, and we'll be speaking with writer Will Stape, and I'll be making a special Star Trek related announcement on that day. Track you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.